Welcome to Construction Genius. My guest is Mike Kading, the CEO of Norhart. Norhart is revolutionizing the multifamily market with the way that they deliver their construction projects. And we are going to talk all about that here today on the show. I'm just going to give you one quick hook for you to think about. Mike is so committed to getting the right people in the right positions in his organization that he went out and hired 16 in-house recruiters. There's one takeaway from this interview that you can run with. It is that idea of hiring an in-house recruiter in your organization. Forget the outsourced recruiters. Get someone in your company who knows your culture and who's committed to bringing the right people in and putting them in the right positions. That's just one of the topics that we cover in our conversation. There's many other things that we talk about, because he is committed to driving down costs 20 to 30% with the ultimate goal of driving down costs 50% from where they are currently in the construction industry. And we talk all about how he is doing that in very practical and straightforward ways. So enjoy my conversation with Mike. Share it with other people. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Mike, welcome to Construction Genius.
Hey, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Please give us the listeners a quick background on yourself, please.
Yeah, at a high level, I run a company called Norhart. We design, build, and rent apartments, but we're really focused on driving down the cost of constructing housing. We're already achieving about a 20 to 30% reduction in costs. We believe we can achieve a 50% overall reduction. But imagine what that means someday. I mean, someday people's rent or mortgage payment could be half. And that's what we're working to try to achieve.
Okay, so those kinds of numbers to me are a little staggering. If you led off with 3%, 4%, 5%, but you're saying you were driving towards a 50% reduction in costs. Let's just back off a little bit. Why are construction costs so high?
If you look at a bunch of industries like manufacturing, for example, over the past 60 years, they've improved labor productivity by 760%. During that same time period, the world of construction has done virtually nothing. They've improved 10%. And so if you just take the lessons learned from these other industries, you can see radical improvement. And I think a lot of the reason why construction hasn't seen that improvement is it tends to be an industry that's sort of stuck in its way. My granddad did it this way. My dad did it this way. By golly, I'm going to do that this way as well. And if you create the right culture, find the right people, and inspire change, you can start to see improvement in your space as well.
It's interesting because it's not unfamiliar for me to hear people talk in this way. And the first thing that always pops into my head is, Mike, I want to improve my productivity and my efficiency and drive down costs, but you don't understand. Every project's unique. I'm not in a factory every single day. I'm out on the job site. I'm dealing with multiple trades. I'm dealing with supply chain issues. There's so much out of my control that drives up my costs. So when someone begins to sort of respond to what you're saying in that way, Mike, what's your response to that?
Yeah. A lot of the techniques that other industries have used can be used regardless of our situation, right? It's just by controlling the things that you do control. One of the simple things is to think about each day, how can I make my job just a little tiny bit better? How can I find 2 seconds of wasted time in my day? And when you really start to look at the things that you can control, you can start to find that, I can make little incremental improvements. To save massive amounts on cost is not some silver bullet. It's solving 10,000 little problems. And the first step is to have the mindset and the willpower to be willing to look at what you're doing and make those small incremental changes. But as you said, there are things that are out of your control as well. And it was the same for us. And so what we started doing is we said, enough is enough. We don't want this out of our control. We want to actually solve it. And so we started bringing all the different aspects of construction underneath our umbrella.
Okay, so let's dive into that a little bit, because it's interesting when just a couple of minutes ago, you talked about the importance of culture and people. So it's almost as if to get ahead of ourselves and say, okay, here's a particular process. I'm just going to try and fix that process, but I don't have a culture and the right people in place, then I may fix a process, but then that process is going to get broken again. So tell us a little bit about that culture and people piece.
Absolutely. So this is the number one most important lesson I've ever learned. It changed the game for us. In fact, we were growing at maybe 10% a year to doubling in size every single year as a result of this one change. And that is to hire the very best people. And when I say the best, I truly mean the best. We go quite extreme. We will fly people in now from other states, have them work during the week and fly them home on the weekend. One of our staff members in 2007, Steve Jobs announces the iPhone. He walks off stage and our staff member walks on that same stage following Steve Jobs' announcement. We now have engineers and architects in-house as well. And honestly, we probably have some of the world's, I would say, the world's best engineer and architects for what we are doing. And the magic there is the best people, they start to change things. They unlock doors for you and make things possible that you didn't even know were possible. And a lot of times, the thing I get back at this point is, Mike, that sounds expensive. How in the world does that save money? Well, if you look at it on a cost per person basis, yes, it's expensive. But what most people fail to understand is that the best people are 2 to 5 to 10 times better or more productive than the average people. And so when you hire the best, when you look at it on a cost per unit produced, they're actually less expensive. So for those who feel they can't afford to hire the best, I say you can't afford not to, and it will change your world.
So let's explore that a little bit. At what point in your career did you reach that conclusion that we're not going, because again, some contractors are like, well, there's a labor shortage, there's a shortage of talent, the competition's intense, so I'm going to bring in a B player, I'll try and suffer through them, maybe a few C players, and if I get an A, then that's great. What sort of difficulties and challenges did you have to get to where you sat down one day and said, I am only going to hire the best, whatever it takes?
Yeah, we were working on one of the projects. In fact, the building I'm sitting in today, this building, and we were struggling with it. We really didn't have great hiring practices back then. We used a lot of temp labor and we couldn't seem to find anyone. We were just like everyone else. And there was a lot of strife among the workforce. They weren't really into it. They were quick to leave if they found a different job. And it was a mess of a construction site. And I just sat down and a mentor beside me and said, Mike, you're thinking about this all wrong. You're trying to save money on employees, but that's the wrong perspective. And there's a book I read at the time called No Rules, Rules by Reed Hastings that changed my world. And it really hit home that I needed to change my perspective on how I looked at this. I need to start building the right kind of culture and finding the right people, changing our hiring practices entirely, which I could talk more about. And that's the moment that it started changing for us. And so we actually evaluated our entire staff and we let like 60% of them go and we rebuilt from the ground up and it changed everything.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So you let 60% of the people go. And one of the issues that I come across many times talking to someone in your position is, yeah, I do want to let that guy go, but I have a contract, I have a schedule, I've got to get something built, I need a warm body. So how did you balance that, sort of that flip in your thinking where you're committed to getting only the best people and balance that with the contractual obligations you had currently in place and building the work that you had to build?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you have to change your mindset. And so we now actively talk about that very mindset. And if somebody has that, like, oh, I got a deadline, I got something I have to get done, we go back to our whole barrage now of examples of times that we took the harder path. Maybe we had to work longer hours. Maybe everyone was stretched thin for a little while, but we let the wrong person go. We brought on the right person over time, and it just totally changed the game for us. So I think mindset's number one. But then two is like, how do you actually do that? The labor market's really tough. It's hard to find the best people. How can you actually find them? And we were in the same boat. At this point, we're probably about 100-person company. And what we did is we ended up hiring on 16 recruiters on staff. So we just said, by golly, we've got to solve this. So like, let's bring a whole team of people on that all they do is recruit. So we don't just post and pray, right? You don't just post on Indeed and hope you get good candidates. It is much more elaborate than that, where our team is going out and looking for the best. In fact, they start building out databases of like all the other construction companies and who the best players are in each of those other companies and start to build relationships over time so that when we do have open positions, we can pull those people in. Again, it's a different mindset, different perspective. You're investing, there's a cost to it, but man, it really pays off in the end.
Okay, let's explore that because that's kind of a unique take. Again, one of the complaints that I hear from many of my clients is recruiters suck. So it sounds like you went after the recruiters suck by bringing in your own recruiters. You talked earlier about the hiring practices that you guys shifted as a result of the change in your mindset. Go into a little more detail, please, on how your hiring practices have evolved and changed over the years.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Don't use third-party recruiters. They don't bring anyone good. I honestly think they just post and pray, and then once they get someone that comes in, they kind of pass them on to you and get a commission off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. And so we realized that if we're going to do this right, we need our own team that actually understands what we're trying to accomplish and that we want truly the best. So we brought that team in, they do the outreach. Then the process they go through to actually select people, for 10,000 applicants, we will bring on maybe 100. And they go through multiple rounds of interviews. And a big part of it is our values-based interview. We have codified, we define what our values are. We hire, we fire, we actively evaluate people based upon those values. People know what they are. And one distinguishing value is being a genuine human. We want respectful people that say hi to you in the morning. Is that too much to ask in the world of construction? Right? Not this egotistical beat on my chest, like yelling at each other, which is unfortunately fairly common. That's not at all what we've had. And we've defined that and we've made that part of our hiring process. So that is the interview process. Once they come out, one kind of unique thing.
Can I ask you a question just about the interview process? So many companies do what you're describing. They clearly define their values and they say, okay, we want to hire people who align with our values. And then in the interview process, they either miss or they fudge. So I'm hiring someone and I have 5 values and they hit 3 of them. 2 of them they're kind of squishy on, but I really need their technical skills. So on they come. 6 months later, why did I ever do that? How do you guys discipline yourself, number one, to be able to clearly identify that this person is in alignment with your values? And then number 2, to not allow people who are non-aligned to come on board?
Yeah. So a couple of things. First, the identifying it. We use probably the best technique that I know of, which I still think isn't imperfect, is a behavioral-based interview style. So tell me about a time when you faced X or when you dealt with X, right? So they're giving you real tangible examples. And until you've done that a bunch, you don't really understand the spectrum. But once you've done a bunch of those kind of interviews, you start to see what a great, honest, deep answer is and what's a BS answer that someone's trying to fake you with. So I think that helps. But I think the more important step is even if they fake it, even if they go, before I get to the more important step, there's one other step too, which is that the recruiters, we spent 5 weeks in training with our recruiters. They didn't do any recruiting. They did 5 weeks of training. And a big part of that was the values and making sure they really understood that we never want to hire someone, no matter how desperately we need them, no matter how much we love their technical skills, never pass them on unless they actually align to our values. So that's part of it too. But if the recruiter sends them out, there's another test. And that is for most of the positions, not everyone, but most of them, they're on a 2-week trial period. We'll pay them for 2 weeks when they're out here. And at the end of the 2 weeks, their coworkers make the decision if they're hired or not on that team. And so they actually go through each one of the values and evaluate them and say, are they a hell yeah in every single value? And if they can't honestly say that, then they reject them. And even for us, we reject about 60% of people at that stage. And the recruiters are always very interested in that because they're trying to say, did I do a good enough job that I sent you a candidate that you actually passed through? They know they can't just skimp.
Let me ask you about that. There's so many questions I want to ask you about that. So this 2-week process totally makes sense. How many candidates that are in alignment with your values do you lose because they're like, dude, I'm not coming out for 2 weeks and regardless of whether or not you pay me, I'm just not going to do that. Did you lose people because of that?
No, but the reason we don't is that if we're at threat of losing someone because of that, we will change it for them. So they'll get either special rounds of interviews and no trial period, or maybe they'll just get a 2-day trial period because they can take 2 days off from their current job. We'll be flexible to work with the candidate. but I'd say 80% of people are okay with it.
Okay, great. So there is some flexibility there.
Yeah.
Let me go back to this. You said you hired 16 recruiters. A couple of questions. Why did you hire 16? And where did you find them?
Yeah. Why 16? We were looking at our growth at the time and what we wanted to hit as far as the number of people we needed to hire and like how many man hours we were projecting it takes for each one of those hires. And we backed out this number 16 as a result. Actually, it was originally 8 and that wasn't going fast enough. So we doubled it. Where do we find them? It is really hard to find recruiters in the United States. We spent a couple of 3 or 4 months. We found some people, but again, no one was right at the level we needed to. And so how do we solve that problem? We open it up internationally. So we have recruiters all over the world now that work with us. And this was actually the start of us opening a number of positions up internationally. Once you go internationally, your caliber of applicant is really high. You've got people that are looking for jobs. So it's a really amazing pool. And usually the cost is actually a little bit less as well. Not always, but sometimes.
And when you say internationally, what countries? Give me a smattering of the countries that you're recruiting from for your recruiters.
Yeah, Mexico, Argentina, Germany. It's mostly South America or just south of the United States and then some in Europe.
Why South America?
Just because that's where we could find them.
Okay.
We kind of opened it up to a variety of countries and we just started learning what was working and what wasn't. Some of the countries, I believe, are native English speaking. 1 or 2 of them is that way. And so that was helpful.
When it came to the recruiters, did you hire people? And the reason I'm asking a lot of questions here is because there may be someone listening today and they're thinking, you know what, I'm going to go down this path. So did you hire people who had construction experience, or was that like an extra bonus if they had it? Or are you willing to train people to recruit in construction?
We were willing to train. And so part of that 5 week of training was going through construction sites and here's what an electrical outlet is. Here's the skills-based questions for an HVAC guy. Let's talk about this so that you have a good understanding of what you're talking about.
Okay. And then in terms of the recruiters, in a construction company, you've got to bid work, you've got to build work, and then you've got to get paid. Were you mainly focusing on the build work? Were you mainly focusing on getting labor and skilled trades in, or were you focusing on project managers, estimators, business development people, all that kind of stuff as well?
They recruit literally everything. So the whole gamut of stuff, even challenging positions like precast erection foreman.
Okay. Excellent.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying my interview with Mike. And yes, it's that time in the show where we bring you our Construction Genius book ad. Yes, indeed. The effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS leadership strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. This is a bestseller in the construction space. Thousands of construction leaders have benefited from this book, and you should too. So how do you do that? You just go out to Amazon. You buy a copy of the book for $19.99. And that's not for a limited time. And what a tremendous bargain $19.99 is for the Construction Genius book. Go and pick it up and read it. Get yourself a copy for not only you, but every single leader in your organization. Read it together, discuss it, use and apply the information, and it will transform your construction company. Now, back to my conversation with Mike.
All right, now let's back it up a little bit, because we began the conversation by reducing costs 20 to 30%, and we went into this idea of culture and how that relates to the reduction of costs, because if you have the right people in the right position who are in alignment with your values, then they're going to be performing at such a level that will have an immediate impact on reducing costs. Am I summarizing that well?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, now I'd like to go to the idea of the whole construction process then. When you began this journey, where were you in terms of how much work you were self-performing, how much off-site manufacturing you were doing, all that kind of stuff? Can you break that down for us here a little bit?
Yeah, when I was started, we did no off-site construction. I would say we probably self-performed framing and a little bit of electrical, but the vast majority of everything else was done by third-party companies.
Okay, and just tell us the process that you went through to go from where you were then to where you are now in terms of the construction process itself.
Yeah, it was definitely an iterative process. I mean, one of the steps along that journey is that our plumbing contractor at the time reached out to us and said, hey, Mike, unfortunately, we are now going to charge 3 times what we have always charged you in the past. And they were right in doing it. The market had gone up quite a bit, but I just couldn't afford to pay it. So what do we do instead? We bought a bunch of plumbing books, started studying on the weekends. We ended up hiring a licensed plumber and a bunch of apprentices and just started doing it ourselves. And honestly, we were terrible. That first year, we probably didn't really save any money from it. But as you start getting into it, you start learning, right? And then once we realized, oh, wow, we can do plumbing on our own now. And we're actually doing it at a lower price point. It's a better quality because team actually cares. We're in line with the rest of our systems. Then we started just bringing on more and more things. Kind of another stepping stone was when we went into precast concrete or the wall panel factory. Again, we were just solving problems. Our precast concrete company wasn't able to deliver precast concrete the day and times we needed to make the entire system work well. And so there's only a couple of these companies in our entire state. And we decided to become one of them, which was scary and terrifying. And there's a lot to it. But we jumped in and now we're in a better place for it.
Okay, so just tell us what state you're in as well, just so people have an idea.
Yeah, Minnesota.
Minnesota, okay. Now, as you're talking through all of this, again, the first thing that pops into my mind is, Mike, this sounds awesome, but there's money, there's time, and there's pain, okay? And typically, the more money I spend and the more time it takes, the more pain I feel. So as you were going through this process, Mike, how did you, as the leader of your company and your executive team, how did you manage that dynamic of we're spending money, it's taking time, and we're in pain?
It's hard because it is a tremendous amount of pain. But this is where you can go back to hiring the best people. And when you have an incredible team, like, dude, there's an excitement level, right? Like, we want to try new things. We want to experiment. If we get into a nice, fluid, comfortable place, then we get a little bit bored and we want to try and push even further. And so having the right people is a key aspect to getting through that. But it's painful. There's a lot of tough, hard moments. You're not always successful. You're learning. I got lots of skin bruises and stuff like that. But I think it's worth it in the end because we're seeing the results. We're actually seeing meaningful cost reduction.
So how do you, as the leader of the company, how do you manage the pain part? And I'm talking about personally, because your company ultimately is a reflection of who you are. How do you manage your pain?
I think one of the first things is to totally let go of your ego. You're right. The company is a reflection of me. But really, at the end of the day, I just want to make a meaningful, positive impact in the world. That's why I'm here. I honestly could care less about money. Money is just a tool to helping us get there. But what I really want to do is I want to solve a pain point, right? I want to make the world better. And for us, it's solving housing affordability. And so when that's all you're focused on, you don't really care about lifestyle. You don't care about my ego. If you're just focused on making that kind of impact, then that pain is a little bit less because, yes, we do employee survey results. And one of the things I do is I share all my results openly. In fact, we post our results as a company on the website where you can see all of our employee feedback openly and honestly. And the reason we do that is I don't want to be fake good, right? I don't want to protect some kind of ego. Instead, I want to be actually good. So that means being honest with our weaknesses. And so when you're that level of honest and open, the magic behind it is it's freeing. You're no longer feeling pain because you're stinking it up at something. Everyone knows you're okay with it. Like, we're all working together to solve it.
Okay, so give us a little bit about how you developed to this point. Has this always been the way that you thought about business, or was this something that you had to come to as a result of the getting 2x4'd a few times? How did that process happen?
For me, I knew I always wanted to make a meaningful impact. So that was always built into my soul. But it has evolved over time in the sense understanding that for us, it can be about housing affordability. I don't know. I never really had a big ego or anything like that. So that I haven't had to be hit in the stomach with a 2x4. There's other things like kind of my last survey results. Some of the feedback I got is that the team wants to connect more with me, actually interact, feel more connected to me. And so that's been a lesson that I've had to learn. I'm learning recently is just get out, spend more time with the crew, connect with people, walk the site more often. So there's lessons like that I get on a regular basis and feedback from people. And then I just work to apply it.
So then in terms of the types of projects that you build, you're mainly doing multifamily in your company. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And are you the owner as well as the contractor?
We are, yes.
How critical is that, being the owner and the contractor? In terms of, in your opinion, being able to drive down the costs as you're describing, how critical is that portion of it?
Of the 20 to 30% savings that we've gotten, probably 5% of it might be related to being the owner. Like I said, it's a lot of things coming together. The value of being the owner is a couple of pieces. The first is you can schedule out your workflow incredibly smoothly, right? So I never worried about hiring a bunch of guys and pulling them back. I've got a very consistent flow. Right now, every 5 hours, we complete another apartment unit. You can do that because I'm an owner, or if you had a really close relationship with an owner. Another thing that's a really big benefit to being an owner is then we get to design the buildings. And so we now have an engineering team, and they do like dissertations, like very thoughtful analysis on exactly the kind of, we do cold form steel right now, the way that the steel is rolled and shaped and the exact widths and flanges. And like they've got the perfect truss piece that they built out, part of a floor system. Like because of that, we can start doing some efficiencies in our engineering as well, which would be hard to do if you're always doing a brand new kind of building.
As you've gone through this process, what was the biggest mistake that you've made? As you've gone from being, sort of like you're not generic, but you're sort of a typical contractor to someone that, as you're describing now, you're doing manufacturing, you're doing construction, you're the owner. Most of the stuff you're doing is in-house. What are some of the biggest mistakes you've made?
One of the big mistakes early on, we were working to get approval through the city council. And there was an issue with the city council that they were legally wrong, but morally right. And I fought with them on it and saying, no, I'm legally right in this. You shouldn't be charging me these fees or what have you. And through that fight, I lost all the goodwill that I had with that city. And that became incredibly challenging. And the lesson I learned in that case is it almost doesn't matter what the contracts say. It almost doesn't matter what the law says. At the end of the day, do the right thing by the people around you. And that goes so much further than trying to like nitpick and get all the contract stuff perfect. So that was one lesson that I learned personally. Although contracts are important, should have them in place. But yeah, doing the right thing by people matters a lot more.
So how are you going to go from, you were talking about 20 to 30% reduction in costs. Your goal sounds like it's 50% reduction in costs.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do to get there? What's your plan for that?
Yeah. So again, there's a lot of stuff. One example of one of the newer things we're working on is supply chain. We want the right material to the right unit or even bedroom at the right minute. And that is really tricky. So we've got a whole supply chain we're building out for that. Everything from sourcing directly from China to how it even gets redistributed on site, kitted to right into the right spot it needs to go. We're expanding our manufacturing capabilities. So we're looking at things like cabinets and building more and more of the buildings off site. I don't know if full volumetric is truly the answer because there's added costs in that, but something between just a kit of parts and full volumetric is probably will land up working through that. We're working on manufacturing facilities outside the United States right now. So we're looking at putting a plant in Mexico that not only helps on labor costs, but it also helps with tariff-related issues because there's some large anti-dumping and countervailing taxes that get put in place in certain imports. Yeah, that's a flavor of it. It's basically just identifying the next set of problems and working to solve them. And once we do that, that uncovers another set of problems and we work to solve those.
What is your long-term goal for the company in terms of, I know your parents started the family business, and what is your long-term goal 20, 30 years from now?
Yeah. Over the next 10 years, we're hoping to reach 192,000 units under management with a 60,000 unit per year pace. And at that sort of level here within the United States, we're starting to have a meaningful impact on supply. If you look at our rents and stuff online today, you'd be like, dude, Mike, you talk about affordable housing and the price you're charging is just the same as everyone else. And that's true. And the reason that is if we lowered our price today, we'd solve housing affordability for a few thousand people. But instead, what we're doing is we're taking those profits and pouring it into the system that builds housing. Elon Musk talks about how it's hard to produce a car, but it is 10 to 100 to 1,000 times harder to produce the system that builds cars. And I would venture to say, some might disagree with me, that in the world of construction, we're building buildings. We're not building the system that builds those buildings. And that's what we're trying to do. And so anyway, as we reach that point over the next 10 years, we're hoping to provide enough supply to the market that prices start coming down naturally, not just for our own residents, but for everyone nationwide.
What geographies are you guys building in at the moment?
In Minnesota, although we have manufacturing in Wisconsin as well, we're currently expanding into Texas and we'll be moving probably southeast, kind of the Sun Belt is kind of where we're targeting next.
Okay, are there certain geographies that you won't go into because it doesn't make sense economically, either from a regulation perspective or from just sort of a reach perspective?
Yeah, New York City is one we're probably going to avoid just because it's so different. And even LA, that's such a landlocked area that it's just new challenges we have to think about how to solve that I don't have good answers for today.
As you're looking at a piece of land to purchase, because again, this is where a lot of people will say, hey, every project's different because the dirt's different. As you're looking at a piece of land to purchase, are there particular parameters for accessibility, for the nature of the land itself that you have in mind that help you to filter through whether or not you should actually get that particular piece of property?
Yeah, we think a lot about the resident experience after it's built. So what are the amenities around that? What is the school district like? Is it a nice neighborhood or does it feel run down? If it's positive in those regards, then we're interested in it. Another thing we look for is we're trying to target 300 to 500 unit buildings. And so we want sites large enough to support that kind of building size. But yeah, those are the main factors.
As the CEO of Norhart, where do you spend the vast majority of your time at the moment?
So a big chunk of my time is really on cultural related things. It's about, I run every orientation. I do follow-up orientations. We do the surveys. I work really hard to build that right culture. Because if I get that right, everything else kind of falls in place. If I get that wrong, we fail. So that's one big area. Another big area is on specific initiatives to drive down costs I'll get involved with. So right now we're working very much on getting it a really tight timeline in how we deliver materials and when people are doing their work. So optimizing that. And then I'm always working on something new as well. And so the new thing for me right now is we recognizing that capital is important, dollars are important in a business. But what a lot of people fail to understand is there's another sort of currency that's also really important, and that is attention. If you look at someone like Gordon Ramsay, a world famous chef in Las Vegas, he's got a few different restaurants, and all of his restaurants have lines out the door. You can't hardly get into like places like Hell's Kitchen. But right across the aisle in the same casino, same location, same great kinds of food, other restaurants are never very full. So what's the difference? The difference is he has that know, like, and trust with people. And so we're working to build that same know, like, and trust with people in our markets because it's just so powerful to helping your business succeed.
So who are your customers then? Who do you view as your customers?
The end customer is the resident is our customer. It's most of America in the areas that we're at, like whoever's a renter in your neighborhood. The other kinds of people that we interact with and the know, like, and trust is really valuable is investors. And so we target retail investors for that as well.
And how much effort and energy do you put into developing relationships with the municipalities, with the governing agencies that you have to interact with when you're building your properties?
A fair amount. I mean, we have a whole team dedicated to that now. I learned through that experience, one of the earliest city council meetings, that is critical. You got to have those relationships. And so after that experience, I would join networking kind of groups. There was a mayor's association that I could join. So I paid a membership and joined that and interacted with all the mayors. One of the mayors of one of the cities that has projects we have, I joined one of his kind of groups just to build more relationship. And the more authentic and real those relationships are, so much easier to get approvals where you need them.
How did you go through the process as the CEO of your company of taking on investment? Because again, some people listening to this, they're like, Mike, sounds great. Obviously, there's money constraints. You've got to get money to be able to do this kind of stuff. I don't want to take on investors. I want to maintain complete control. How did you go through that process yourself?
Yeah, so even for us, we haven't taken on investors until just recently. And the reason that is because our costs are so low. So we can actually build buildings for less than the loan of the project. Think about that. It's crazy. So we'd actually generate money with each building we have done. Now that's changed in the last 6 months because of the rise of interest rates, which is why we started bringing on investors. But what we ended up doing is we created a new investment vehicle, a new company called Norhart Invest that sort of acts like a bank. It's not actually a bank. It's not FDIC insured, but people can put money into accounts in that Norhart Invest, and they can lock their money between 6 and 24 months, and then they'll return the cash to them. And so we actually looked at creating a bank, and it turns out there were some reasons we didn't, but we essentially created somewhat like a bank. What's nice about that is our investors, they don't have control. They don't direct anything, and they know exactly what their interest rate's going to be. It's good, but it's not infinite. And because of that, it's given us the autonomy that we need to run effectively as a business, but also giving us access to the capital that we need to continue to grow.
As you're focused in on culture, you're doing the orientations. Do you ever envisage a time when the company is going to be too large for you to do these kinds of things? Or is that something you're just committed to and you're going to continue to do it?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I can answer it today. I know that I will fight tooth and nail to continue doing it as much as I can. And so maybe what it looks like in the future is more of a live event, or we're in a larger kind of auditorium space for orientation. But I just think it's so important to build a connection with people. And it's hard to do that unless you're willing to show up.
I'm going back to the recruiting and the hiring part. You have the 2-week process for most people where the team at the end has to be able to say, hell yes, these guys meet, or this gal meets our culture and our values. After that 2-week period, is there another check-in point after that? Are you doing anything at like 90 days or anything like that? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a kind of a review process, but maybe the more interesting thing is something we stole from Netflix. It's called the Keeper Test. Managers ask the following question of their staff on a regular basis. And that is, if this particular employee were to quit, how hard would I fight to keep them? If the answer is I wouldn't fight tooth and nail to keep them, then why are they there? Most companies know they want the great ones. Most companies know they want the bad ones. But where we're different than most companies is that most companies are okay with the average. We're just not. And so we're very open with people up front with that at orientation. And we're very supportive of people on the way out, but we actively are letting people go that are no longer meeting that bar.
Okay, so it's interesting because I'd like just to make a note of 3 names that you've mentioned so far in our discussion. You mentioned Reed Hastings, you mentioned Elon, and you mentioned Netflix. And all of these are not construction companies. Reed Hastings is a tech investor, if I remember rightly. So what do you do consciously to fill your thinking and your perspectives with non-construction perspectives? How do you filter out what works, what doesn't work, and those kinds of things?
Yeah, we look for who's doing something best in the world. And when it comes to culture, I'm telling you right now, it's not the world of construction. Even the best construction companies, I would still say, are weak compared to the rest of the world. And so we started looking at places like Google and like Netflix and started asking, well, what are they doing differently? And so we studied them incessantly, and we applied what they learned into our own industry, even down to all of our benefits. For example, all of our team members, including our low-level construction workers, get unlimited paid time off. Crazy. Paid time off as much as they want, whenever they want it. But when you look at the world through the lens of places like Google, it became the right thing to do.
So that it's interesting because as I've been reading about Google, Amazon, and all of these other folks in the last, let's say, 6 months, Facebook, for instance, Zuckerberg's been out there saying efficiency. And so what efficiency means is we're going to cut costs and get your butts back in the seats and drive, right? Because again, what you just said, limited time off, and I've got construction CEOs rolling around on the floor laughing right now. They just fell out of their seats. They just drove off of the road, something like that. Mike, come on, dude. This is construction. How does that actually work? Because don't people take advantage of you as you're putting that kind of policy in place?
Yeah, so it's incredible. When you have a staff that's doing all they can to support the company, and you've got a company doing all they can do to support the staff, it's magical, right? So for the company supporting the staff, providing things like unlimited time off are a no-brainer. But it only works if you have a team, a staff that are doing all they can to support you. Yeah, that's really the key. We talk about that at orientation, where I care much more about where your heart is at as a staff member. Are you here just to punch a clock? If that's the case, that's no problem with that. It's just not here. But are you here to change the world, to change this industry, to make it better for future generations? Then awesome. Let's tackle that together. And if all of us are thinking that way, then I don't care if you've got something to do with your daughter, gymnastics or something today, go for it. Like, I want you to live a good personal life, and let's make sure we're changing the world. And you get those kind of people, time off is not an issue.
How does that work then on the job site where, like I've got plumber X or electrician Y and we've got to get this in today, and they call me the night before and say, hey, dude, I got something I got to take care of. How does that then work?
Yeah, so we do expect people to be mindful, right? So we do have a schedule. Every 5 hours, there's another deadline. In fact, for some teams, it's down to every dozens of minutes. So a few different things. In a particular team, we have sub teams that are working in different parts of the construction. And then one of the sub teams might be what we consider off batch work. And so that off batch team will come and sub and help with wherever someone needs to take a time off or be gone at that time, so the main production doesn't stop. But another part of it is just communication. So you got to let us know in advance, unless it's some surprise that you want to take time off. And then we want to make sure that not everyone is taking time off at the same time. There's some coordination that goes on there. What we say is that we hire great people, just act like adults. Make sure we know we got to get the production running, make sure that we're doing it in a way that the production doesn't stop.
Yeah, I think it's really important because if you do commit to hiring the right people, then those people will not take advantage of you by definition.
Exactly.
But it's being willing to make that commitment yourself. That, I think, is going to be the challenge for most people. So with that in mind, Mike, thinking about if someone is listening and they're thinking about, okay, I want to go on this journey of reducing costs. And it's a combination of me being able to get the right people in the right position, doing the right things. What are 2 or 3 action steps someone should take immediately to begin on this journey?
I think first and foremost, make sure you're committed to it. Because this is one thing I've learned is that your culture is a reflection of your mindset. Because there are subtle things that you do that you don't even realize you're doing. There are sudden cues, there's things you're not saying or maybe you should be saying that are speaking so much louder than what you think you are saying. So unless you are fully bought in with whatever direction, whatever culture, whatever vision that you have, it's not going to pan out, right? So if your heart is in, I want to make a ton of money so I can go sit on the beach, that's where your heart is at, you're never going to make it. It's just not going to function properly. So get your heart and your mind and your soul all in alignment first. Once you have done that hard work, then it's evaluating your team. Because if you are now a different person, I'm guessing the team that you hired is more a reflection of the old you rather than the new you. And so we actually put together a 4-step test that we went kind of multiple levels for people to go through. We evaluated every person really in depth.
What was that 4-step test, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so we had a skills assessment for each trade. And sometimes it was as simple as, can you read a tape measure? We really didn't have much of a hiring bar back then, but you'd be shocked at how many people that claim to have construction skills that can't really read a tape measure. It's shocking. And then there is a value-based assessment. Then there was a coworker assessment. We actually went through and sat down with every single employee on your team and evaluated that person and got direct feedback. And then it was manager feedback. And so we combined all those scores together to figure out who were the best ones and who were the weak ones on the team.
Okay, so get aligned yourself, evaluate your team. What was the next step there, do you think?
Yeah, so part of evaluating is letting the bad ones go. And then I would say, get serious about your hiring practices. And so for us, what serious meant is we hired a bunch of recruiters. I don't know exactly the problems and things that you face today in hiring and finding the right people, but find honest solutions to that. I often talk to business leaders in meetings and they say, yeah, it's really hard to find great people. I hear people complaining all the time, but there are solutions. There are solutions if you're really willing to invest the time and energy to solve it. So actually take the step to solve that if it's truly important to you to hire the right people. So that may be step 3.
That's great. I think if there's one takeaway, I just want to nail this one down. If you can hire your own recruiter or recruiters, I think right there is a leverage point that every contractor of any kind of revenue can take advantage of. Let me ask you, in terms of the recruitment, this is kind of a sort of a weeds question. Do you use any kind of assessments that they take in the recruiting process? What's your experience been with that?
We tested that out a little bit, but we found that just wasn't good enough for what we needed. We were getting too many false positives and too many false negatives. So we decided to pull back out of that and just, it's a little bit more manual. There's more energy involved, but it's a very human process for us right now.
Excellent. Mike, you've been very generous with your time. Appreciate your insights. Just tell us a little bit more about how people could get in touch with you if they wanted to, and a little bit more about your company.
Yeah, you can learn more about us by visiting norhart.com. That's Norhart.com. And even if you visit our website, it does not look like a construction website. So right there might be some hints and tips to changing the way you look at things. Kind of one fun thing, we have a number of shows now, and one of the new shows is called Zero to Unicorn. It's about the journey of small business growing from nothing, from losing everything to $1 billion enterprise, and what that journey is actually like. So if you find some of these things interesting, you might find that show is interesting as well.
Excellent. Well, we'll put links in the show notes to the website and also to the other stuff that you're doing. And Mike, again, thank you so much for joining us here today on Construction Genius.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
That was awesome. Really appreciate Mike's time. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius. I hope that one of the takeaways you get from this discussion is hiring your own in-house recruiter. You may not get 16 right away, but what if you hired one? What if you invested, I don't know, 100K, 150K in that one person who is dedicated to bringing on the right person and putting them in the right position in your organization? Is that a viable idea for you? I would submit to you that it is, and that it's something that you should seriously consider. Feel free to give us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius, and we'll catch you on the next episode.